one who understands the complexities of this ambitious cinematic masterpiece?
Okay. Hey, everybody. I've got a special treat for you all today. This is Robert Alvarez, animation legend Robert Alvarez, who was actually one of the very first people I met at Hanna-Barbera back in 1998. I'm guessing it's 98. Welcome, Robert.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I was looking at your IMDb page, and these things aren't always accurate, but it
No,
said you
they're
started. It said you started out in 1968, which seems a little early because there's a big gap
That's
after
true.
that, and that is true. Okay,
My first job was in 1968.
right.
And,
Yeah, it was.
and
Do you
then
remember
there's,
the name of the show?
Yeah, it was the Banana Split Show.
Oh,
And
okay.
the Banana Split Show had two cartoons, Arabian Nights and Three Musketeers. And I was in school, and a friend of mine who was in the same film department got a job there, and he called me up one night and he said, "Hey, do you still want to get into animation?" And I said, "Absolutely." And it was a small subcontracting company, and I drove over there, met the owner, Fred Calvert. He sat me down in a room, had me do an in-between, came back, checked on my drawing in about 20 minutes and said, "Okay, you can start tomorrow." And that was the way I got into the business. I mean, he was a crook in the sense that because he didn't pay me what I should have been paid, and he didn't pay me. Here's what he told me. He goes, I will pay you $50 a week as soon as we start using your drawings in production, which was bullshit because they used my stuff right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he got embarrassed into finally paying me. But I didn't care because I was in the business and I wanted to get in, and I was living at home. And that's how I got started.
Yeah, I remember one of the first stories you told me was about how you'd ride your bike over to Hanna-Barbera and kind of raid the dumpster for animation cell.
Yes. Yeah. My friend Tim Walker, you may have met during the time you were in the Warner's building there.
I did.
Tim and I met in 7th grade, and he knew where Hanna-Barbera was. And we started riding our bikes sometimes after school. We did it a lot. And in those days, Hanna-Barbera would throw everything away. Once a show aired, they knew they were safe, and they just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't want to store all the stuff. They kept some stuff, but the majority of the stuff, 90%, got tossed out. So the dumpster was always filled. And we would just ride our bikes up to the dumpster and start filling our backpacks with stuff and ride home. And we did that all the time. And we went to other studios too. Like UPA was right across from Warner Brothers. And they would throw stuff. They didn't throw cells out, but they threw lots of drawings out, which I still have. And we would go there, and Format Films was right on near the corner of Laurel Canyon, Riverside in North Hollywood. And we would go there. And then sometimes my dad would drive us down to Clampett's studio on a Saturday, and we'd jump in the dumpster and pull stuff out. And we made the rounds.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's when I was at pretty much any studio, I guess people are just putting out so many drawings and so much content that half of it ends up in a recycling bin. So I definitely have binders full of, drawings from Powerpuff and Dexter's and all sorts of old shows. But yeah, nothing is as cool as cells.
Yeah, cells are nice, but I have lots of drawings. In fact, I have a lot of drawings from Billy and Mandy that I pulled out of the recycling bin on the 3rd floor, I think. And I would, you go into the Xerox machine and there's recycling, and I would just see the stuff filled up to the top. And I looked at them, I went, "Oh, these are nice drawings." I took a bunch. So I have a nice, decent, small stack of various like models, people, whatever the heck they were doing on Billy and Mandy, because I liked the show. And I said, why not? It's in the recycling bin. It's free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know IMDb isn't always accurate, but regardless, your career on there is impressive. You've worked on, I would say almost everything that I can remember that came out of Hanna-Barbera, and after that, after the acquisition, Warner Brothers.
Yeah. Well, I worked in the business for 55 years. And because I was in various places, a lot of times I was in the right place at the right time, which enabled me to work on different shows. And, if you're in the business that long, you're going to have opportunities. And I had lots of opportunities, and I would get, because I worked on a show with somebody and they got to know me and knew what I could do. They'd recommend me for shows, and I'd get a lot of phone calls and asking me to pick up freelance. And I almost always said yes. And, so I worked on a lot of stuff uh, I've worked on so many things that I have forgotten most of it until someone says, "What was it like working on and fill in the blank on a show?" And I go, "Oh, okay." Because you can't remember everything you've ever done. It's
Hmm.
impossible. And then IMDb is not 100% accurate.
Right.
They leave out stuff for whatever reason. It's because it's not reported to them. I don't know how it works. Or they put incorrect stuff on there. There's some things on my IMDb that's I never even had anything to do with. And for years, they had me listed as being married to, I can't remember, uh, some voiceover actress who I've never even met. And I finally got them to fix that. But getting them to change anything is almost an impossible task unless you pay in and get the IMDb Pro, which I'm not going to
Yeah.
give them the money.
Yeah. I did that once actually in order to fix a bunch of stuff. And as soon as I stopped paying, people went in and added more strange things. So there are definitely things I didn't do on mine as well.
Yeah, and they even take stuff off. Like I had, my listing used to be like over like 200, like it's like 209, and now it's down to 191. So they, for whatever reason, took stuff off.
Hmm.
And for some reason, some of it I know is legit, that should be there. And I mean, I don't know who the hell runs IMDb and what those people are like and how they figure stuff out. But to me, at this point, it doesn't really matter because I'm retired, so they can do whatever they.
Yeah. Uh, my first memory of you was definitely from Cow and Chicken.
Right.
I had been taking some tests. Came in as a prop designer, and you were one of the first people I think I met. Vincent Davis brought me around to meet people. It was right after Warner Brothers bought Hanna-Barbera, and the place was kind of a ghost town. Like all by myself, I had an office meant for probably 5 or 6 people.
Well, the problem was Ted Turner merged with Time Warner, and therein started the problems because when that happened, I can remember there was a meeting in the parking lot at Hanna-Barbera before we actually moved, and Joe got up and Joe Barbarian gives a speech going like, everything's going to be great. We're going to be doing wonderful things, like he's in control, which was
Hmm.
not true. And then I guess they decided whoever to sell the property, and so we were forced to move to to the Warner's building in Sherman Oaks, and not everybody went because they got rid of some people, and we were on the 14th floor, and then down in the Garden building where they were doing Powerpuff Girls, and I think Johnny Bravo,
Hmm.
and I think it was Johnny. I'm not sure, but it wasn't fun. I didn't like the building. I didn't like going there because it was in a terrible place, and I don't particularly like the Warner's management, and I can say that's true to this day, especially once Discovery bought Cartoon Network and it really went downhill.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers controls everything now. But that's going to change once the Paramount deal finally finishes going through all the paperwork and stuff. You watch what's going to happen. I can kind of predict some of the bad things that's going to
Oh
happen.
yeah. Well, we're down to what, Disney and Paramount, and that's pretty much it.
It's unfortunate because what? I'll tell you something. Um, I told you this in an email. Went to Gindy's house on Memorial Day because he has an annual Memorial Day barbecue, and he invites people that he's worked with and from all over, from the old days of animation, like and even Sony and all that stuff. And I had this conversation with him. It's like we both agreed on it. I feel bad for any young artist who maybe has like 5 years in the business because they're never going to know how good it used to be. And it's never going to be like it was years ago. Never. It's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. I was talking a little bit about that with Alex Almagar, just about I don't know how collaborative
I
everything was,
saw
and
the interview.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, these days
It's like
it's a whole different animal.
Yeah, and you know, and for whoever your viewers are that will be watching this eventually, I feel sorry for you because you're not an old fossil like me. I'm a hell of a lot older than you. So I and it's a long reason why I decided to retire. But you're still young, you're vital, you're very creative and all that. And look what the industry's like. I mean, you're basically shut out.
Yeah, definitely.
It's sad.
Yeah, it's very sad. I would say the majority of the people I know right now aren't working, and really, really good people as
You're
well.
absolutely right. Do you remember Davis Doy?
I do.
Davis? Okay, I just exchanged some emails with Davis because he was like contacting me saying like, "How you doing? How's retirement?" And, you know, he's retired as well. And he said in his email, I don't know if this is accurate, but he said his understanding is like 70% of the guild is not working. I don't know if that's true, but I'll tell you it's probably close to it because I just know so many people that got into their mid 60s and were out of work for a couple of years and said, I'm done
Hmm.
and I'm retiring. You know, Sean Cashman retired
Yeah,
because of a couple of things, health, and couldn't get any more work. And I can go down and give you a list of people that you may or may not know that had said, I'm out of here. I'm finished. And they retired because the business is so bad.
yeah. I might have retired if it were possible. I got to somehow find a way to squeak past the next 10 or 12 years.
So you can go online, you can check out the motion picture website, you know, and go into your own account and see how many years and hours you have and all that. And here's something you should know. And I went through a lot of stuff when I retired and found out things the hard way. So I advise a lot of people that are retiring because you'd be surprised. And animation people seem to be ignorant of what they can do and what they can't do and their rights and all that stuff. But when you're 62, you can put in, if you have the hours and years, and you check with motion picture, you can put in for the motion picture health and welfare as if you're working. And if you go back to work, then you know you you would get then the original plan. So check that out when you get to be 62. And if you go in for early retirement before 70, you can only work 39 and a half hours a month. But if you are still working and you're 70, like I did, I worked until I was 74, I think. Uh, you can collect your pension and keep and work all you want. And you also max out on Social Security too at 70. So, but you can collect that out a lot early. And then there's it's a nightmare when you have to go apply for Medicare if you don't know the simple ways to get your Medicare. And there is a simple way. But when you get to that point, you contact me and I'll tell you all the stuff to do and so you can avoid the pitfalls.
All right, you got a deal. Circling back around to Cow and Chicken, do you remember how you ended up on that show?
Vaguely. The thing was, I was working for Gendy on Dexter's, and I don't remember what my salary was at the time, but Gendy wanted the directors to do a lot of work. It wasn't just slugging the boards and writing the sheets. You had to approve layout like BG keys, models and all that stuff. And then he wanted me to also do posts and call retakes and then, and I thought to myself, this is a lot of work and they're not giving me more money. And then the opportunity for Cow and Chicken, I think I was contacted by David on that. And, you know, my salary would be the same. And all I had to do was like direct the old fashioned way. And if you want, we should talk about directing because I have opinions on what directing is like these days. And I thought, well, why do I want to do all that work? And I'm not compensated when I can do what I've been doing before this and work on Cow. So I went to Gendy and said, hey, look, I'm going to go work on Cow and Chicken. And he said, okay. And I thought, well, I'm screwed with him, but he never held that against me because after I was done with Cow and Chicken, I went right back on to working on Powerpuff, which he was supervising producer. And I worked on Dexter's, Samurai Jack, Symbiotic Titan. I worked on all of his shows up until when he revived Samurai Jack. So I liked working with him, but I think Cow and Chicken, I think David approached me, I think, because he got, in fact, the story he tells was that Larry Huber recommended me for the show, which may or may not be true.
Yeah, and Larry was working at Hanna-Barbera at that point, I think. I do remember going to some...
Larry was the supervising, Yeah, Larry was the supervising producer on What a Cartoon, the shorts, and then he got associated with some of the shows. Once we moved off the lot, he left and went to Nickelodeon to continue working with Fred. But yeah, he was supervising producer of the shorts, and he was not the producer though of Cow and Chicken. That the animation producer was Vincent,
Right.
and then they had like a line producer, which was Lewis.
Yeah, that's where I met Vincent and Lewis, who eventually
Right.
I brought over to Billy and Mandy as well. Yeah, actually, Larry was the very first person that I pitched Billy and Mandy to at Nickelodeon before I sent it into Cartoon Network. And I remember he looked at it and he said, "Hey, this is a lot of fun. I like the characters, but nobody's ever going to pick this up because it's got the Grim Reaper in it." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're probably right."
You are lucky that you did what you did, and you went to Hanna-Barbera and pitched it, and went through the processing and did 7 seasons. You're lucky that you didn't have to work for him, because I can tell you lots of stories about him, and the things that he did. Do you remember? Well, no, you wouldn't remember him because he wasn't. He was Bob Honorado was not at when we moved. Was not at Hanna-Barbera once we moved. He was at the old Hanna-Barbera, but Larry was responsible for getting Bob pushed out the door. Let's say, and that's a polite way of saying getting him fired, just because Larry always wanted to look good on paper and look good to the bosses. Whoever his boss was, he would always kiss up to that person. And he did some things that are really not so pleasant, especially what he did to Bob.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of conversation with, because I was at the point where, let's face it, he couldn't do anything to me, and he would annoy me, and I would just basically say, "Get the fuck out of my office," and kick him out. I don't respect him. I don't like him because of the things that he did. And I can go on and give you a list, but I don't want to bore your viewers with all the stuff that he did because they don't really care.
Yeah, I didn't know him very well. I had that one meeting. I sat in on a couple of Butch Hartman's early. Well, I don't know if they were early pitches, but they were early for me. And he was there, and the whole tone was sort of uncomfortable for me. But yeah, I don't really know.
What's interesting is because if you worked in the business as long as I did, things happen, and you meet various people, and some of them are good, most of them are good, and some of them are not so nice and not pleasant. I consider Larry as one of the unfortunates because I got him his first job in the business in 1969. If I had said something else to Fred Calvert, Fred wouldn't have hired him. But Larry was in Chenard when I was in Chenard, but he was a year ahead of me, and then he left school. And in 69, he showed up looking for work, and I said to Fred, "Yeah, hire him. He's a good guy." But he was a completely different person because he hadn't gotten his foot in the door, and he was very humble and all that. But boy, did he change after the first modern strike, because he decided that he got a call from, I think, Ken Spears, because he was working for Ruby Spears at the time. And they said, "If you come across the line, the picket line, and we'll make you management." And that's what he did. So he dropped out of the union, and he went over to the dark side. Let's put it that way. And he completely changed. And it was from there on in, it was always kissing the ass of whoever was in charge. And I've told this before, like he was like the Vichy French in World War II, where he would just bend over and let the Germans come in. So that's my opinion of Larry.
All right. I suppose we should talk about directing since you brought that up.
Sure.
You didn't start out as a director, right? You started out doing designs?
No.
Or?
My first job, I was doing in-betweens, and then I got right into doing assistant work. And then from there, in the early, like through the decade of the 70s until the latter part of the 70s, I was doing assistant work. And once again, being in the right place at the right time, I was doing work for Bill Hutton and Tony Lubb, who were subcontracting Hanna-Barbera work. They needed more animators, and I had been working for them for a long time, so they knew what I was capable of. And they just said to me one day, "Well, you have to start animating." I said, "Great, that's what I want to do." And I started animating. I don't remember what show it was on, honestly. It was some Hanna-Barbera thing. And so I was animating for a while. And then in the early 80s, I got a call from a friend who was subcontracting work for Deke on, I think, the Heathcliff show. And he wanted me to pick up doing sheets. And I said, well, I'm animating. I don't really want to do that. And blah, blah. And I said, okay, I'll try it. And from my experience of animating, I thought, well, this is easy. I don't have to do the drawings. I just have to talk about them and write them. So it progressed from that, and I was still animating. And then once I got on staff at Hanna-Barbera, I don't remember how I got hooked up with Ray Patterson. He was like the supervising animator at the studio, director. And he started making me first just write sheets for a season. And then the next season, he said, well, you got to start slugging boards. And he would overlook my work, and he taught me basically how to direct. And it just kind of just snowballed from there. And I was still animating in the 90s, probably into the mid 90s. And after that, when animation, because the contracts went away, I was just directing only. And that was the rest of my career until I retired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess Dexter's was probably the last thing I can think of where they were doing layouts and almost animation in studio.
Well, on What a Cartoon, like the two shorts that I did, we did the layouts, and that was in 95.
Yeah.
And we did the layouts, and they were, really detailed layouts. They were animated. All I had to do is on the stuff that I didn't lay out, chart it and write it out on the exposure sheets. And I slugged the board, so they were laid out. And after that, probably they stopped doing layouts and anything, because we certainly weren't animating. And then it was like the way it became pre and post, where they would, and this is before the digital world, they would send everything hard copy by plane, but we would slug the boards, write the sheets, and they'd send the whole package over in a box. And then once the digital world came in, it became easier, because it was just like once you did everything, it was like you press the button and boom, it's sent. But I was still animating until at least 95.
Yeah, I forgot about the shorts, because we did layouts on my round of shorts as well. But yeah, series-wise, it almost feels like there was more animation going on in recent years before everything sort of collapsed. In that the board artists had Storyboard Pro, and some of those boards were almost animated.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the latter years, I would get, there was no slugging. I mean, slugging stopped once the digital world really got going. And then what happened, and a lot of this is going to be my opinion, and if you don't agree with it, I don't care. Animatics, and Ginny agrees with me on this, animatics, as far as I'm concerned, are a false sense of timing. They're bullshit. Because what happens in animatics is you have, especially nowadays, you have young talent who are the creators and showrunners, never animated a day in their life, so they really don't know timing at all. And then you have an animatic editor who certainly doesn't know timing at all, and they make the picture based on the track and the board and all that. And the showrunner will go, oh, give me some more room there, or make that, whatever it is. And then it comes to someone like me, who has to make the scenes work based on the time that they've allowed for those panels. And sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not. And I'll give you an example. The second to last show I worked on, which was Fiona and Cake, which was a spinoff of Adventure Time, I would get notes from the showrunner saying, yeah, this used to piss me off. The timing it seems to be wonky, a little too slow. I'm thinking, well, son of a bitch, you're the one who cut the animatic and made that whatever the length was. I didn't decide it. You did. So I'm making what you handed me work. And in my opinion, people like myself who are writing sheets, whether it was still on paper or been in now in the digital world, writing them digitally, you're basically doing what I used to do all the time. instead of slugging the board, you're figuring out what the slug should be based on. If someone says, "Here, this panel is 300, not 300, 3 feet 8 frames," I'm deciding how to break that down because they certainly didn't. So I'm doing what I used to do, except now I'm thinking about it and I'm writing it down on sheets, and that's what it's come to. And unfortunately, a lot of people that are direct, well, that's a whole nother thing. Don't get me, my opinion about current directors is they can all feel good about giving that title, but it's a lot of it's bullshit because they're mostly board artists. And and they may not even be doing the whole board for a show or an episode. They're supervising maybe, if it's like a half-hour show, 2 other people, or if it's like an 11, maybe one of them's the supervising, the other one is not. And they get the title of director. They're not directing a damn thing. They're just doing a storyboard. And if you would think about it, go back to the shorts that were done in the 40s and 50s, wherever, Warner Bros., you name the plays. You never saw the board artists getting director credits because they didn't direct anything. And it's the same true today. But that started in the early 90s at Warner Brothers, where they started giving board artists director credits. And I'll tell you a funny story that ties in with Cow and Chicken and what I'm talking about. I did freelance on the Warner Brothers show called Freakazoid. I don't know if you ever saw it.
I did.
And I was doing freelance. And they weren't half hours. I think they were like 11 minutes or 7 minutes, something like that. And so I picked up, I was doing freelance, and I did one where I slugged the board and I wrote the sheets. To me, that is directing, not the guy who supervised the board. Fast forward, we're doing Cow and Chicken, and this guy, his name was Jack Hyder, and he's retired now. He originally was a background painter at UPA. But he got one of the titles of director of Freakazoid. He came looking for a job on Cow and Chicken, and he dropped off his demo reel, which was on a VHS tape at those days. So I asked Vincent, "Hey, can I look at this? I want to see what he's got." So I went back to my room and I'm looking at it, and there on the tape is the Freakazoid episode that I directed, except he was calling himself the director. And I went back to Vince and I said, "Yeah, this is bullshit. He didn't direct that. I did." And it's now the norm where board artists get the title of director, and they're really they're not directing anything. They're just supervising the board. I had, on the last show I worked on was We Baby Bears. And I had a Zoom meeting once with one of the so-called directors, nice young lady, very pleasant, and it was just me and her. And I said to her, and she had about 5 years about at that time in the business. I said, "Have you ever animated anything?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I did some in school." That's not production work. That's not the same. And I wasn't rude to her. I said, "Okay, great, whatever." And she was really nice, pleasant. But that's what you're dealing with nowadays. You have people that get the title of director, and in my opinion, they really couldn't direct a show, much less traffic. So,
yeah, I've talked to a couple of people about this, and I feel like it especially affects directing, but it's sort of almost a universal problem in the animation industry with titles. Like, depending on where you're at and what you're asked to do and who you're working for, they can mean entirely different things. So it's
exactly.
really difficult to even look at somebody's resume and be like, "Oh, well, they directed, 30 half hours," and then you get into it and you're like, "Oh, they don't know what they're doing."
Yeah, look, you know what goes on in the business, and there are some people that are going to take credit for things that they really can't do or never did, and the majority of people are honest. And I'm so out of it now, I couldn't honestly tell you like who's doing what, because I don't care anymore because it doesn't affect me. Occasionally I talk to people like yourself or Sean when he was still working. I talk to him all the time. And my friend Randy Myers and like Gendy occasionally. And they'll tell me like what's happening, but I don't know what's going on. And I don't really care because it doesn't affect me. And I think it's it's funny what's going on because it's just not the same anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess, in my opinion. Um,
Absolutely.
After working on so many different series over the years, do you did you find it difficult to switch back and forth to different shows, or did you adapt pretty quickly, say going from Hanna-Barbera to like an action show? Or
No, not really. I'll tell you something because I did so much all the time. I never found it difficult to go from like a cartoony show, let's say Powerpuff Girls or something like that, and then and I did do action adventure because I worked on Ben 10.
Mhm.
I worked on Generator Rex, which was basically Ben 10. And I never found it difficult. It's just like you have to think differently a little bit because you realize, okay, these are not cartoony characters, these are more like realistic. So when I started working on Samurai Jack, I didn't find it like, oh, what do I do now? It was not a problem because I had the good experience of doing a lot of animation. So I knew what I was doing and I had worked on a lot of different shows. So it was never difficult for me. I would just, if I ever had a question, I would go and ask. And if you had to deal with things that were like bad boarding or something like that, there's always a solution. I would tell that to everybody. There's always an answer. Whatever the problem is can be solved. So I never felt it was difficult to go from cartoony to action adventure. I preferred cartoony shows, the humor shows, over action adventure, but I could do both.
And you did a couple of pilots for, I guess, What a Cartoon? Is that what they were calling it back then?
I worked on more of What a Cartoon show episodes doing directing work than I worked on more of those What a Cartoons shorts than anybody else because what would happen is someone that was young and novice, let's say you had come in at Hanna-Barbera and pitched Billy and Mandy then when we were still on 34 and Coinga, they would have assigned you to someone like me to help you direct your short because you had at that point had never
Hmm.
done that. So I did stuff like Butch
You
Hartman,
did
for
work on the
example.
pilot.
I directed his shorts. I worked on his pilots, on his shorts at Hanna-Barbera. In fact, I even worked on his uh, I've already forgotten the show. His Fairly Odd Parents, before it was a series at Nickelodeon, doing some freelance. And so I worked on a lot of, like I said, I worked on more of the What a Cartoon shorts than anybody else because I would just get assigned. They would say, "Hey, you direct this for this guy," because it would be a novice person. Obviously, Gendy didn't need me to do anything, and Gendy would directed Craig's shorts. But I worked on stuff like even on Hannah, Bill and Joe stuff, because at that point, they were just phoning it
Hmm.
in. So yeah, I worked on a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
I was specifically talking about your personal shorts, Tumbleweed Tex. You did two of those, I think?
I did Tumbleweed. First one I did was Pizza Boy,
Right.
and then and that was my first one. And then I pitched another short to them, which they turned down for the dumbest reasons ever. When I heard the excuse that they gave me, I went, "You got to be kidding me!" And I got really pissed off. And I thought it was, and I still think it's a funny concept. And then I pitched Tumbleweed Tex, and they greenlit that too. So I did those two shorts that were mine, and that was enjoyable because it was something, it's like when you did Billy and Mandy, that's something you created, and you got to do it. And guess what? It was somebody else's money paying
Yeah,
for
that's
it.
always
So
nice.
that's how I felt about my shorts. I got to do two shorts the way I wanted to do them. They were my creation, and it was somebody else's money. So it was fun.
Do you remember what the reason was they gave you for rejecting the second short?
Absolutely. I can remember where I was standing in my office and went, well, he was not, he didn't go to Sherman Oaks. Fred had three people that he made into a development department. And these three people should have been taken out at Sunrise and shot because they couldn't develop anything. The one I got assigned was Dan Smith, who was probably the nicest of the three. And the short was about a dog who's insane. And he has this mania. And I based it on an actual news report that I saw on the news. The news report I saw was this dog, people were complaining, taking their dog to the vet because he keeps grabbing like logs and chewing on logs and we can't get away from it. He's got this mania for these logs. And so the vet put him on Prozac. And I thought, that's a funny idea, a dog on Prozac. He's a crazy dog. So I did a whole short about a dog who's insane, and he's in love with a log, and his owner takes him to. I'm going to cut a lot of stuff out to make a quick story, but he grabs him, drives him in a car like a maniac, and he drops him in a dog asylum in the night drop. And then he goes through all kinds of, like, he's supposedly therapy, and he escapes from the asylum, and then all these bad things that happen. And it's always constantly with logs, like meeting up with a logging camp and all kinds of things. He winds up back in the asylum, and he's there like many years, and he's supposedly cured, and he gets out, and his new mania turns out to be mailboxes. So he falls in love with mailboxes, and at the end, he's going home, and his wife is a big mailbox with an apron on, and there's a little baby mailbox in a high chair. And he goes into this tirade thinking that she's been cheating him, but they turned it down, and the excuse I got was, it's too much like John Kay's log commercials. I went, what? It's not about the log. It's about, it could be any prop. It's about the dog. So I never got to do it.
Yeah, they always had weird lists of things they didn't want to do, and they really didn't have good reasons. But by the time I got there, I think it was no pirates, no knights, no cowboys.
Yeah, it's all bullshit. Well, I did mine was Tumbleweed, Texas, a Western.
Yeah, we missed Westerns by a year, I think. By the time we got there, they really didn't want genre stuff.
Here's the thing. You don't know what goes on in the room after you leave it and you've done your pitch, and who the people are that are in the room when you pitch. So when I pitched, Larry Huber was still involved. And the people that really decided were Fred Seibert, Mike Lazo. I don't think Betty Cohen really, and Linda Zeminski and Larry in the room. But when you go in and pitch, the room had like 30 to 40 people. It was like an audience, and the thing was, you had to make them laugh. And afterwards, they kicked out. And so you're at the fate of whoever's left in the room and what they say. You'll never know for sure what they say about you or the short or the concept. And you're at their mercy. And let's be honest, if those people knew everything and were so damn smart, they would be very wealthy people and would be creating hit after hit. But they don't know. It's a gamble. It's a crapshoot.
It really is.
So you're lucky with Billy and Mandy because, first off, it's a great concept. It's a funny concept. And you're lucky that you got to do 7 seasons because it was a great show. I enjoyed working on your show a lot. But you're lucky. Think of all the people that may have had some good ideas and pitched, and God knows who they were pitching to and never got to do it.
It's like I said, Larry rejected it when I pitched it to him at Nickelodeon. So I'm sure if he was still at Cartoon Network, it probably wouldn't have happened because I think at that point it was really down to Linda Zeminski and
you're right, because he would. Well, if he was still there, Fred was not there because once Turner merged with Time Warner, Fred saw the handwriting on the wall and knew that they would get rid of him, and he left and made his deal with Nickelodeon. And Larry just went along with him because he was Fred's loyal lieutenant. And but if he had been at Hanna-Barbera, he might have kiboshed you there and said to Mike Lazo, although you got to realize the people that said yes to you were like Mike Lazo and Linda Zeminski. And if Larry was still there, he might have said no. But if Mike and Linda liked it, it wouldn't matter what he said. So, but you'll never know.
I won't.
And you're better off that he was.
From what I've heard, between Mike and Linda, one of them really liked it, and the other one wasn't so sure. So that Larry might have pushed him over. But I'll never know which one.
But
or why.
but that's exactly what I'm talking about, because they don't know anything. A lot of people, I hear people all like in interviews and saying like, and I don't dislike her or him for Matt, but they always say great things about Linda Zeminski and also, but any person that's in development, I have a saying that I used to say for years and years. The old saying, those that can do and those that can't teach. That's an old saying, but I added something to it. I said, those that can do, those that can't teach, and those that can't do either one are in development, because none of the people in development are geniuses. They don't have a clue what's going to be a hit. It's just damn lucky. And they're the ones that always take all the credit for hit shows that they were connected to, but never bring up the shows that bombed or failed that they were connected to. They don't know a damn thing. So you lucked
Yeah.
out. You pitched to the right people at the right time.
Yeah, I got to see everybody was in Atlanta at Cartoon Network, so I really didn't get to see how the sausage was made on that front. But by the time I got to Disney, they were just it was a meat grinder for everyone, including the executives. Like every 6 months it felt like they'd get a new batch and just throw everything out and start all over again because nobody wants somebody who's already been fired to have a big success and then nobody gets to clean it.
That's true, but Disney's is even worse now than it was when you were at Disney. But it's a joke what goes on, and I'm always amazed. I give credit to anybody who gets anything on the air, even if I don't like the show, because I know what you have to go through to sell a show. So the world's worst show getting on the air is a big achievement because you have to deal with a lot of executives and people that really don't know a goddamn thing. And it's just luck. It's just pure luck. Although you came up through in a time when it was far better than it is now. It's a lot
True.
worse now because a lot of studios, like McCracken told me this, because he went from Cartoon Network to Disney to Netflix. And when he was at Netflix, he went in with a guaranteed deal like he could do 3 seasons. However, his first season was 10 episodes, the second season was 6, and the last was 3. And they pushed him right out the door. And Lauren had a show that she pitched and was supposedly going to do and had hired a crew, and then they canned it. So it's a different world now, and it's not the same, and it never will be the way it used to be.
True. Working on Billy and Mandy, did you have any favorite episodes that you worked on?
Well, I just liked the show, and I don't recall a lot. I do recall one particular episode I worked on that I think turned out good. It was the one when you did an homage to Michael Jackson's music
the Thriller
that.
video. That was that.
Yeah, Thriller. Yeah, and you did something similar to it, and I just liked the show, and I especially liked Billy the most because he was just a funny voice, a funny character, and it would say really silly, funny things. I thought he was the best. But I liked all the characters that you came up with, even your good and evil and all that, and all those episodes. I just enjoyed working on the show because it was better than most shows, because I worked on shows that were not so good. And then you get to work on something that's good. Well, the fact that you did 7 seasons shows or tells people that it was a good show.
Yeah, thank you. I always think it's funny that I'm not even sure it was 7 seasons. It could have been 6 or it could have been 8 because the way they divide that up, like you were saying, is a little weird. But 76 half hours or whatever. Not bad for those days.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah. Because the norm used to be, especially when the syndication days were big, was 52. Once they got 52, they could, put those into syndication. But you did a lot. Powerpuff did a lot. Dexter's got revived, so they did a lot. And your show was the exception to the rule because not everyone that had a show at Cartoon Network did as many episodes as you did. So that's a great thing. Sure. And I like the show. I wish you had 10 or 20 seasons of the show.
It'd be nice.
Well, it would be nice, but like they don't ask
Yeah,
me for
well,
my opinion on any of these things. But look, I liked working with you. I liked working with the one exception that you know of, but I liked working with you and the various artists that I would occasionally talk to. I thought the show was really good. It was funny and it was good. And so I liked whenever I worked on something like that, I always wanted it to succeed and go on and on and on because it's good for the creator, it's good for the industry. People get jobs and they work, and it's good for everybody. And your show is one of those shows that was on for quite some time, and you did go. Which I just remembered something. You you got in trouble once, didn't you, with Warner Brothers because you used like the Flintstone in an episode, and they got pissed off.
oh yeah, well we did that all the time. I think that was the problem was since I came out of Hanna-Barbera directly into Warner Brothers, I just kept using those characters because I assumed that I could. So we'd occasionally throw in Yogi Bear or a Top Cat or a Scooby Doo even, and nobody ever said anything
Yeah,
about it until we did one episode where Hoss Delgado, who was the monster hunter, is running over a whole bunch of Hanna-Barbera characters in his car. And then I got an
right.
angry letter that was like,
Yeah,
"Hey, don't do this anymore because every time you use one of these characters, we have to charge ourselves, X amount of dollars." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
that makes no sense. It's all the one big
Yeah.
same corporation. Why should there be a barrier for you to use a character that actually Warner Brothers never created, and you're using Hanna-Barbera stuff? But see, that's the problem with the merger with Turner and Time Warner. They became the controlling agent of all
Hmm.
Hanna-Barbera stuff. And I don't know if you ever saw or are familiar with the the thing that we did, Flintstones on
I
the
did. Yeah.
Rocks. Those guys, which was Chris Savino and Dave Smith, did a storyboard for another show, which was going to be a quick draw, and it got shelved because of Warner Brothers. And I'm convinced that that's why you never see it. It's never aired anymore because Warner Brothers. And why, I don't know. But you would think they would be happy to have people interested in the product and the characters because it's going to generate
Yeah,
income
and
and
just
money. It
keeping the
doesn't make any
characters
sense.
alive between productions, and
Yeah,
but
yeah, and so yeah, I'm glad that you did the shows where you ran over characters or did whatever you did to them because as far I think that's funny. I think you should have done 10 times more of that stuff. Let them take you to the woodshed and slap you around a few times, but who cares?
yeah, they. I don't know how long this was going on for, but Warner Brothers was sort of selling off pieces of Hanna-Barbera, Ruby Spears kind of acquisitions when I was working on a couple of Scooby-Doo DTVs. One of them was supposed to be for the 50th anniversary or 60th anniversary. I can't recall. And we were never going to make that on our timeline, but I was like, well, I want to use the original, 1969 music. And they were like, oh, you can't do that because we sold that to Rhino Records like 10 years ago. So again, we would have to charge ourselves X dollars.
That's funny because I think on Flintstones on the Rocks, we did use some of Hoyt Curtin's original music. And you remember, I can't remember his last name, Don,
Don
background
Watson.
painter that you had on Billy and Mandy. Don Watson, right. He did a lot of BGs for Flintstones on the Rocks because he had worked on the
Yeah.
original Flintstone. It makes no sense. Yeah, I don't understand how Warner Brothers works. I don't understand their thinking, but I'm not a fan of Warner Brothers, the present regime and how they do things. It's an unfortunate thing, and it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But I can imagine them calling you up and saying, bad boy, you can't
Mhm.
use the music or something like that. It's stupid. It's really dumb.
It is. You also directed our Emmy Award winning episodes. I was talking to Mike Diedrich the other day, about that, specifically puddle jumping, the one where Billy's going into and out of the puddles.
I remember something that they were made for, they were going to put on cell phones or something.
I think they did.
It was a short. I just remember doing. Yeah, I remember doing something, and I remember going with you to the Emmy, the Creative Arts, no, it's the Daytime Emmy Award show in Hollywood. I remember that. What a farce that was. We were sitting like at the far end, and the show started, and they're still rolling in tables for people to sit at. That's how bad the Daytime Emmys is. And they're a really weird organization, because if you know anything about daytime and how it works, you know how stupid it is. Because if let's say you have a series, and let's say Billy Mandy was a daytime show, and you submitted it, everybody that worked on the show, regardless if they worked on the episode, could go on the ticket. And if you won, people that never worked on that particular episode would get an Emmy. That's crazy. They don't do that on Prime. But guys like, remember Russell
I do.
Calabrese? He directed a Tiny Toons, I think it was, episode, which won an Emmy. But 2 other directors got Emmys because they all got on this ticket because they worked on this, not that episode, but the show. But they never worked on, because Russell told me all about it. And I've seen pictures of guys with holding the Emmys, like this Kirk Teen Black and Mike Milo, and they didn't even work on the particular episode. But if you have, and here's the other funny thing about daytime Emmys: if you win, there's only one award. Everybody else has to buy theirs.
I think that's probably why they do allow so many people to be stuck on the same ticket.
Yeah, and they're not cheap, but in those days, the daytime Emmys, like, I don't know if you remember Brian Sheasley.
Yeah.
Well, sure, you should. He worked on your show. Well, he was a governor in the Academy for a long time, and he told me that the daytime Emmys were manufactured cheaper in the sense that they weren't dipped as many times as the primetime Emmys are. And I don't know if things have changed over the voting on daytime Emmys is really stupid too. I could go in and tell you how you can cheat on that and win yourself an Emmy. And I won't tell you who told me how to do it, but because he's still working in the industry. But it's a farce. It's a farce. But
yeah,
what can you do?
Yeah, the award shows I went to, I don't think a lot of people realize just how boring they are. So I think unless you're an A or B list celebrity on a primetime Emmys, it's not as glamorous as it seems.
Did you ever go to any? Did you ever go to any of the primetime ones at the? Well, first they were having them at the Shrine, and then they moved them downtown to near the sports arena in some facility down there. And the primetimes are better produced than daytime because they have celebrities come out and be the people that announce the awards and winners. And there are a lot of celebrities that go to the primetime ones because they're nominated for something. And you can meet people there. I met a number of celebrities that were genuinely nice and would spend time talking to you. And yeah, I went to a lot. I can't remember how many I went to, but I went to a lot of them, and they were fun. It's more fun to go to one and you win than to go to one and you don't win, because then it's depressing.
Yeah, I went to one of those. I don't even really remember why. I know Derek Bachman was there, but I have very little memory of the actual event.
It was probably something that he was either working with McCracken or Gendy or something like that, because he worked with both guys. And have you seen Derek lately?
We worked together at Disney. He's part of the group I would go see movies with. But I live in Costa Rica now, so that's kind of dead-ended for the moment.
Yeah, I know.
But it's been a couple of years now since I've seen him.
Well, you saw him after he lost all his weight and all that. Yeah, the first time I saw him was at an Emmy mixer, and he's waving to me from 30 feet away, and I'm going, "Who is that guy?" I didn't recognize him, and then he came over and started talking to me. I went, "Oh my God!" He was he went from Sydney Green Street to like the thinness of Humphrey Bogart in Maltese Falcon. He just completely changed.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
good for
no,
him.
that's impressive for sure.
He's still working.
Yeah, on Primal at least. That's the last thing I knew he was working on.
Gendy told me on Memorial Day that he's might be doing a 4th season of Primal, and he read me. I said, "So what are you doing?" And it was like this long list of stuff. He'll never go hungry. He's got features in development, shows in development. He's got a show in development, another one at I think an Adult Swim. He's got a whole ton of stuff going on, and the guy he's very, very successful. And the nice thing about Gendy is if you work with him and he likes you, he's the nicest person. He's really genuinely nice and treats you really nice. And he's the one person that I worked with in the business that will critique you to your face, not behind your back. And if you did something he didn't like, he'll tell you up front, saying, "Don't do this or don't do that," whatever, and he'll tell you right away. I really liked all the shows I worked with Gendy on. They were always
Yeah,
good.
I've got a ton of respect for Gendy, but we really haven't talked much. He was the executive producer on all the shorts for The Big Pick. But I think he just got overwhelmed with whatever he was working on at the time, so I never really got notes on my my layouts. And over the years, like he and McCracken both are so well spoken on animation. I love listening to him talk, but yeah, I don't know him too well.
Yes, but they're complete opposites. If you know both of them really well, Gendy is a lot more outgoing. Craig is fine once he gets to know you. And if you put him in front of a bunch of people, he's very well spoken. But in the workspace, he can be very timid and shy and only interact with a select few. I always got along with him fine. And he was always nice to me, and has in the past said nice things about me, and I like both of them. But they're two different people. And I would correct you on one thing that on one of your previous interviews, I can't remember who it was, but Gendy and Craig did not get fired from Cartoon
Oh,
Network. Someone in one of
it
your
might have been me.
interviews said that they left on
Okay.
their own accord. Gendy left because he went to a thing that didn't work out. He was there for a couple of years doing and set up a place in Studio City where they were going to develop shows and features that never happened. McCracken left after a while, but he got pissed off at I can't think of the guy that was in charge that came in and started running the place. He got pissed off at him because they were doing Cartoon Institute and they didn't want to do anymore. And so Craig got pissed and he left and went to Disney. But they left on their own accord. And then Gendy came back to do the ending of Samurai Jack.
Right.
So
yeah, yeah, that was probably me because whatever happened, just everybody kind of left or was fired at the same time. So it felt like
I'm like one of the guys like the last man standing because I stayed to the bitter end. But yeah, a lot of people would come and go. Like Randy Myers exited and came back a couple of times, and he's actually doing very well now. And yeah, it's like any other studio. People are there for a couple of years and then they go and get a better job somewhere else, and that happened. I used to see that all the time. But I was content to stay. I had opportunities to go other places, but I never really followed up on them. In fact, when you went to do Fish Police,
Fish Hooks, yeah.
Fish Police. Oh, please. I apologize. Fish Police was a terrible show. It got canceled on the 3rd episode, and they only did 4. When you went to do Fish Hooks, I got a call. Did Lewis go with you?
Who?
On that?
Oh yeah.
Lewis Cuck
Yeah,
go with
did.
you to produce. He called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to come work on Fish?" I said, "I would say, yeah, I would go talk to anybody. It doesn't cost you anything." And I did, and I went over and they showed me the pilot and all that, and I went back to my office, and then he said, "Well, I can't make you an offer. There's some lady who I've forgotten her name now, and she's the one that handles all the money." So she called me up, and her offer was $200 a week less than I was already making, and I said, "Nah, I don't think so." And I didn't go, and I'm glad I didn't go because the guy that you did hire was Eddie Houchins. And that job didn't last very long. They decided not to do what they were going to hire me to do. And that basically he got pushed out the door. But I turned down jobs at other studios. Like I turned down a job at Nickelodeon on, Sean went over to be a supervising director on it. And, I can't remember the guy's Eric Robles show.
Fanboy and Chum Chum?
And yeah. And I went over and interviewed with him. And he later told Sean that he would never hire me because I'm too old and set in my ways. That's what he told Sean. And then the guy had the nerve to come up to me after that at a mixer, and I knew what he had said. And he's like lathering me up and kissing my ass, telling me how great I was, and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, son of a bitch, I know what you really think. But I turned that down too because they didn't want to go there.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, it's. I think most of my career was at, I guess, Hanna-Barbera through Warner Brothers, which is sort of the same entity. But yeah, I was pretty much a diehard company man, at least up to the point when I went to Disney. So I did have some other opportunities, but I was like, no, I'm happy here at Cartoon Network. So, whoops.
You know, when you work in animation for a long period of time, you have to make choices and you make decisions. Sometimes they're not so good and they don't work out, but you don't know that going in. And the ideal thing is just to keep working for as long as you can to, earn a living and keep going. And so there are some people that have worked on The Simpsons since that show has started. And eventually that show will end when Disney decides they don't want to spend the money anymore. And here's the joke I always tell about that. Some of those people will go for job interviews and they'll be asked, so what have you done? And they go, well, I worked on The Simpsons. And they go, yeah, what else have you done? No, just The Simpsons. And that's going to be a problem because they only worked on one show their entire career. But the business, the best explanation I ever got was by the first guy that hired me, Fred Calvert. And he told me something back in 1968, I think it was, that was true then and it's true now. He said, we are like migrant farmers going from season to season, picking the crop. And it's true. And in back when I first started out, it was, you didn't work the whole year. If you would probably work 6 months and you'd be off for 6 months. And it's kind of turned back to that now with so little production that people, if you get a job for 6 months on any show now, you're lucky. The difficult thing for you now is the animation business is just not the same anymore. So opportunities. And here's another thing, and I know you touched on it with Ian in his interview. AI. Sam Register said in an interview once a couple of years ago, he goes, well, we're never going to use AI. Yes, he will. Because when Paramount takes over and they're the new executives, and if they say, we want you to do this cheaper, we want you to use AI, you think he's going to say no? Right. They're going to use AI. Disney's already got rid of a bunch of people at Marvel and they're going to replace them. And they said so. They're going to use AI to replace them. Martin Scorsese is going to be doing his storyboards for his films with AI. So AI is going to replace some people. It's always going to be around and it'll get more used. And there might be smaller crews, but it's going to affect the industry. So if you got a guaranteed gig for 6 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I think my attitude now is different than it was in the old days. I feel definitely less tied to any particular place or company or executive or group of people just because you can't be. I think it was around the time we were at Disney.
Exactly.
Carl Greenblatt was like, we're mercenaries. It's like you said, migrant farmers. They'll tell you you're part of the family, but at the end of the day, you're there as long as you're useful.
Yeah. Well, it's the old story. They love you as long as they need you. And it was that way when I started out in '68. They as long as they needed you, they liked you. And as soon as they didn't need you, which was every at the end of every season, it was out the door, and you hope to God that you would get to work in the next season. It was really kind
Hmm.
of scary times because you used to, like in those days, you would go on unemployment, and that at that time period, you went into the unemployment office, and you had to stand in line for your appointment time, and whatever your money was, and it wasn't a lot of money, it was given to you in the highest denomination cash. So you would have like $50 bills, whatever it is. And it was, to me, it was embarrassing. I hated going to unemployment in those days and standing in those lines. And then sometimes you would see well-known actors collecting unemployment and you go, oh my God, this guy's collecting unemployment. And I hated it, but it's just a different time right now. And, the good thing for you is you have an established record of things that you've done. So it's not like you're a novice, some guy that just came out of some art school and is trying to get into the business. You've established yourself and you've got credits and you can probably get work, whatever it is that you got this contract for or whatever something else on the horizon. So it's not like you're an unknown, and
Right.
that's a good thing. I'm sure there are times when you probably worry about it, go, oh, what's going to happen next? What am I going to do? And that's normal. But you're far better off than the person that's graduating from like
Yeah.
the Savannah School of Art and Design, whatever it is, and trying to get into the business. So, you know, y- I think you're the type of guy that will survive because you're very talented and you'll do well. Whatever the future is,
Thank
you'll
you,
do
Robert.
well.
Do you have any advice, would you say, for these young people just now coming out of school or who've been in the business for only a couple years?
Well, I would say this, a couple of things. First, if you really want to get into animation, don't give up. Keep trying. It's easy to quit and give up. It's a lot harder to keep trying, but you got to keep trying. And also, coming out of the business, it's not like the old days, like when I started, because nobody's animating in town anymore. Although animation's done all over the world, but if you want to be a 2D animator, you better start studying up on Korean because you're not going to be doing it in this country. Uh, but if you can do more than one thing, like if you can storyboard, if you can do character designs, if you can do BG keys, if you can color key, if you can do more than one thing, you're better off and getting hired. And if you can't, even if you can do that stuff, I've told people, if you can't get hired as an artist, try to get a job as a production person. Because then once you get your foot in the door at the studio, you can go around to the people and go, hey, look, this is what I can do. And then they realize, hey, you're not just a production person, you have talent. And then maybe that'll lead to a job. Because I've known people in the past a good example of that,
Yeah.
J.G. Quintel. He was an intern for Gendy on the Star Wars, Clone Wars shows. And look what
Yeah.
happened to him. So you gotta keep trying. And it's, if you're someone that's like a senior citizen like me and you're trying to get into the business, I would say, no, don't even try because it's not going to happen. Because I think some places won't hire you because of
I
if you're
mean,
an
there's
old fossil
definitely
like me.
ageism, and I think there
If
always
I was
has
on
been.
I think there is. Nobody would ever admit to it, but I think there is. Like if I was still wanted to work, I bet I could not get hired, regardless of what I've done in the past. Only because I'm an old guy and I'm sitting down, so you haven't seen me walking, but I have a hard time walking because of one of my physical problems. And I went through a serious health issue in 2022 and 2023, and they probably wouldn't want to hire me just because I'm old, and because they can hire somebody that's younger for
Well, yeah,
less
yeah.
money.
You were telling that story about
So
the guy who told you were set in your ways, and that was years ago. So
yeah, and that was when I was physically fit, and I was probably I was probably might be in my early 60s or late 50s. I can't remember, but I was physically fit. I could have easily done it. But ageism does come into account, I think now more than ever. But there's always exceptions to the rules at studios where like Disney for a long time had guys that were really old and
Hmm.
worked there for their entire careers because they were talented people. But that's
Right.
not the norm, and especially now. And so but you are not as old as I am, so you don't have that
Not
problem.
yet.
At least I don't think you should have that problem. Not no. Well, lie about your age. That's always a good thing. Um,
I'm looking forward to my 35th
yeah,
birthday.
like if you're exactly start counting backwards. It's a good idea. If you're sitting down in Costa Rica and you're 75 years old and going, gee, I'd like to get work on a show, it's probably not going to happen. But you're still young enough to where you might possibly work on a show again if you want to, and the opportunity comes up. Uh, I I wouldn't count yourself out, regardless of what you've been through in recent years. And I know that you've been through a lot because I've seen you talk about it with other people. And you're, I'll give you an example. Uh, you know,
Hmm.
your friend Greg Miller, you did an interview with him and Tom Warburton, and I found I liked listening to what they had to say, although they did say some things I didn't agree with. But Greg, I don't think is working right now. And if he is, he's not doing what he said in that
No,
interview
he
because I know
he
he's
had
not
a
working on Patrick.
short-term job when I last saw him about 9 months ago, but I think that's over now. So yeah, I think he and Warburton are both unemployed right now.
But here's the thing. In my opinion, and this is not a slam against those guys, I like them. I worked on both of their shows. I think you're far more talented. And so you're might be in the position of like a lot of people in the industry. It's not because of your age, and it's certainly not because you have a lack of talent. It's because of the industry sucks. Most companies or want to do existing
Hmm.
IPs. They don't want to do new stuff because it's cheaper to do something they already own. And that, like, I had a conversation about that with McCracken, and he said that
Oh
seems
yeah.
to be the norm right now. But maybe in 5 years it'll turn around. But we had that conversation 2 years ago, and it still hasn't turned around. But yeah, I'm not trying to lather you up because I'm not looking for a job. So
Well,
what
that's
I'm
that's
telling
good
you is
because I don't have a
genuine.
job to get.
You're a talented person. No, but listen, I'm being honest with you. I think you're a very, very talented person because based on what I worked on your shows, and that's not easy to do. You did something that's really difficult in selling Billy and Mandy, and you were very successful at it, and you were damn good at it. So you have the talent. It's just that you're a victim of the circumstances now of the way the industry's turned out. But you're not alone. It's not
No,
like they're
yeah,
picking on you.
that's
Uh,
the nice thing, I guess. It's not that nice, but there was a time a couple of years ago when I was like, do I suck? But yeah, when there's this many people,
that's no,
you know, hurting and looking for work, it's definitely the industry.
it's easy, and unless you're an egomaniac, which I don't think you are. It's easy to go, yeah, what's wrong with me? Because I'm not working right now. I mean, the guy who is carried away with their talents and think that they, can walk on quicksand would never think that. They'll think like, well, I'm just not working right now because I don't want whatever. They'll lie to themselves. But you're not that type of person. And I'm sure that what you just said about yourself worrying about like what's wrong with me, a lot of people in the business. Sean and I had conversations about that when he had a miserable year last year, and he's more or less said almost those exact same words to me, like what is it? All of a sudden, I can't do it. I'm having problems. I'm not any good, and it's not. It's just the
Hmm.
way the industry is. And um, I just thought of something, and it might be slightly humorous. That you might have some young talent watching this interview that are getting really depressed, and they're already going to the drawer to pull out the revolver and going like, I can't go on or take a pill and end it all. But you just got to keep trying. Young people, keep trying. Don't give up. If you really want to get into the business, you'll get in, and you just got to sometimes take a crappy job to prove yourself to whoever's in charge. And remember this too, once you get into a studio and working, those higher up people, they don't always know everything. They just are lucky that they have those jobs, especially the people in development departments. Because and I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but my opinion of development people are extremely lucky because they have no talent whatsoever. They don't write. They're not artists. They're not directors. They're nothing. And somehow they got those jobs where they can decide your fate. And so what? I mean, it doesn't mean and until they themselves get bounced out, which happens to them sometimes. And then they're out sucking sidewalk like everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you said about, for younger artists, just, diversifying your set of skills. And I think that's very wise. And I think that continues, like once you're into a studio or once you've got a foot in the door, I think, saying yes to whatever, I think that's helpful too. If somebody's like, hey, we're looking for somebody who can do color. If you think you can do color, you may as well give it a shot.
Oh, sure. I would also suggest to young artists that are still in school or just going to get out of school, try to learn as many technical computer skills as you can, because the digital world now controls the industry. I mean, it's not just looking at an animatic. I mean, there's all kinds of different programs, which I don't know because I never had to learn that. I did some digital work on the last few shows, but it was using a Cintiq and it wasn't that hard. But there's all kinds of digital programs that can do things that help you. And if you can learn as many of those as possible and also increase your skills, it makes you more valuable to a studio. And I would suggest that, try to learn as much as you can before you start making the rounds. And here's another thing. Always be ready for this rejection. Everybody gets rejected. I went in 1967 while I was my first year of art school. I made the rounds to studios in the summer, thinking like, well, I'll try to get a job in the summer working at a studio so that it'll be good for me for when I get out of school. I got turned down by everybody because I was a student and they didn't want to hire me. I was still a student when I got hired in 68, but I was just lucky. Rejection is something that everybody goes through, and it's not a personal thing. It's just, you have to deal with it and you just keep moving on. I'm sure there was some points in your career where you got rejected on something you wanted to do and you kept on going.
I think there's something to be said for being relentless. I was definitely, more than anything, when I moved out to California, I wanted to pitch and run a show, and I probably pitched 24 shows before I ended up at Hanna-Barbera and pitched Billy and Mandy.
When I was still inside the studio at Cartoon Network, they would always trot in the interns, the new semester of interns, to talk to me and meet. It's like, I'm the guy in the zoo. It's like, go meet the old guy. And so I would talk to them and spend as much time with them as they want and answer questions. But a lot of them had this attitude like they were going to get into the business and have their own show. And you would try to tell them in a nice way, it doesn't work that way. Get your first job and then build up to that. But not everybody, you don't walk in the door and go like, here I am, I'm pitching the show and it's going to go on. No, it doesn't happen. It almost never happens that way. So I would tell that to young talent. Don't think you're going to walk in and have your own show in the very first year you get into the business, because the odds are against that happening. And you may never have your own show, no matter how creative you think you are. And it's just get your foot in the door. And also, I would also advise students or young people trying to get in, don't copy what's already been done. And a lot of what's on the air now, to me, looks the same. It's almost like it was designed by the same people. Be different. Don't try to ape something that's already been done because you think that's what. You have to be creative and do something different. Like when you pitched Billy and Mandy, there was nothing on the air like Billy and Mandy. The concept was completely new and different. And that's probably what helped sell the show. Plus the fact that artistically the designs were really good and they were different too. So I would say young people, develop your own style. Don't copy an old style. I mean, don't go into a studio and go and try to rip off SpongeBob and pitch them your version of SpongeBob because it's not going to happen. You have to be creative and be different. Do I sound like the old guy that says, "Hey, you kids,
No,
get off
it
my
sort of
lawn"?
sounds like you're inviting kids onto the lawn as long as they can handle what happens on the lawn.
Listen, I want everybody to be successful because it's good for the industry and it's good for people because it gives jobs to everybody. I'm just realistic, having been through it, and I know what goes on. And like I said, learn to deal with rejection and keep trying and don't give up.
All good advice.
So, with all that said, so when you get your next
Yeah,
show,
why
are
not?
you going to hire me?
It's always been kind of a dream to get the old gang together,
kid.
but yeah, something tells me you're probably not going to come out of retirement for.
No, I kid because I actually turned down coming out of retirement to JG. He wanted me to come out of retirement to do his new season of was last year of regular show, and I invited him to my house on a Saturday to have lunch with Calvin, and I wanted him to see me so he would understand, like, well, my mobility is not all that good. I had been through cancer, and I said I don't want to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. And so if somebody called me up tomorrow and offered me, they'd have to offer me a ton of money to even consider it, which is never going to happen. But no, I'm not interested in working anymore because I don't have the energy
Mm-hmm.
like I used to.
Well, are you enjoying retirement
mean-
anyway?
I like the fact that I don't have to work. That's a plus. I don't do a heck of a lot because I have a neuropathy condition in my legs. I get around and I'll show you. I've got here's my cane that I use every day. And I have a cane, which is my security blanket. And I have special braces that fit in my shoes that are plastic and they're made for people with neuropathy. So they help your feet work properly. So I walk slowly. I get around. I can, I can still go up and down stairs and get around. But it's just, luck of the draw, bad DNA. And I sit at my desk like where I am right now. And I look at a lot of stuff on what I don't know if have you ever seen my
I haven't
Facebook
had
page?
Facebook for a couple of years, but I probably did back when I had it.
Well, I have a big collection of animation art, and so I post stuff on a daily basis, and that sometimes prompts people to ask me questions like, "What was it like working?" I had recently because I posted one of those drawings that I found in the recycling bin of a storyboard page from Billy and Mandy, and I posted it. And someone asked me, like, what was it like working on the show? And, I said, it was great. It was fun. I liked working on the show. So I get people that ask me questions about the business. Sometimes you get
Mm-hmm.
crazy people asking you really weird stuff. But, I post that and I watch a lot of videos on YouTube, all kinds of stuff from documentaries to old features and whatever pops up and they go, oh, that's interesting. I'll look at that. It could be current news or something. And I sit around. I just do. And then on Saturdays, there's a collectible show near my house, not too far from me. And I've started buying and adding to my comic book collection. So I go there and the guys that I talk to there, they all know me. They know what I've done. So it's more like something for me to do and visit with and talk to people. So I get out once a week and do that. And the rest of the time, if I'm leaving the house, it's usually because I have a doctor's appointment because I've acquired a long list of doctors whose hobby is keeping me alive. And so it's like the actor Jimmy Stewart said, after 70, it's patch, patch, patch. So I have a lot of doctors. In fact, I've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning. And that's about it. I don't really do a heck of a lot.
I would hope when I hit retirement, I'm not doing a lot either.
You know what? You probably, when you retire, if and when that day comes, you strike me as a guy that's not going to stop
Yeah,
doing
you're
art.
probably right.
You probably will continue to do art, even if it's just for yourself. You probably will continue doing that, and that's a good thing if you enjoy it. I've often I've done these interviews before with other people, and I did an interview that's on YouTube with 3 cartoonists called Pencil to Pencil, and they're all working cartoonists. And they asked me, like, "Do you draw anything?" And I said, "No, I don't draw anymore. I don't have the interest to do any drawing." And I'm not alone in that, 'cause I know guys that are they're my age that work in the industry, and they don't do drawing either. But you might be different. You might want to continue to draw. You might want to make your own whatever shorts or something like that. But I don't have the desire to draw. I mean, I do occasionally draw something for somebody,
Mhm.
but it's very seldom.
Right. Thank you so much for doing this, Robert.
It's a pleasure getting to see you again and talking to you. And I hope whoever views this, that I didn't bore them with a lot of stuff that they didn't find interesting. But,
Well, you can't please everybody.
I'm honest. I told you exactly. Yeah, you can't. You're right. If you try to please everybody, you go crazy. But no,
If they don't like it, they can get off your lawn.
I'm happy to do it. Yeah, really. Anyways, it's fun talking to you, seeing you. I wish you all the best of luck living down in Costa Rica. I hope everything
Thank
works
you.
out for you
Yeah,
down there.
Best of luck to you, Robert.
And anytime. Thank you so much. And anytime you've ever had any questions or want to ask me anything, feel free. I'm always here. And I'm happy
Thanks,
to talk
Robert.
to you anytime you want.
Hopefully I'll see you next time I'm out in the LA area for a convention or whatever.
If you come up for a convention or something like that, let me know in advance, because maybe I might go just to see you.
All right. Yeah. Thanks again, Robert. Have a good day.
This is the end. Smash your television.